These are axes that are available in Old World Blues. These are not necessarily the only axes that are available there, because you can get some throwing ones which you can use to fix up these ones, which is pretty awesome. These ones are available pretty early on into that DLC, and if you want to rush these, they can be fantastic melee weapons, because this is basically just an upgrade to a fire axe, which I already consider a really strong melee weapon. So the Proton Axe is generally carried by the various lobotomites, and this is carried at all levels. So even if you want to go there at a very early level, you can pick these up pretty easily. The Proton Axe requires 50 melee and 5 strength in order to wield, so average stats all the way across the board should be pretty doable for a melee build, especially if you want to rush there right away. And this one does 50 damage per hit, which is quite good, 96 damage per second, which is also quite good. These do attack fairly fast. This has 25 crit damage, half of its regular damage. A lot of two-handed melee weapons have this for some reason. This has a 1x crit modifier, so normal crits. This one only costs 22 action points to use in VATS, making it a very good VATS weapon, and it does have its own unique VATS attack, which is pretty cool. This is available once you have 50 melee and you go into VATS. For the Proton Axe, this is called Proton Electrocutioner. I do really like that name. That is a really good name for this. On top of that, this only costs a slight bit more action points to use and deals double melee damage inside there, which melee already deals extra damage in VATS. So you're dealing even more damage, making it so for a VATS weapon, this one is really, really good. This one weighs 8 weight, so it's not super heavy. This has 200 item health, which I believe is better than a regular fire axe. It's at least better than the unique version of the fire axe in terms of overall health. So that's pretty good. As well as this does have an additional effect on top of that. Since this is an electrocuting weapon, this deals extra damage towards robots and power armor. This is 50 extra damage towards robots outside of Old World Blues, 20 damage to robots inside Old World Blues, and 20 damage to power armor enemies. So this one is very good at fighting robots. For the pros of the Proton Axe, this one does do high damage and high damage per second. That is really nice. Fire axes just in general are very solid melee weapons for just about any sort of role. This does extra robot damage and extra power armor damage, so if you're fighting those type of enemies, that one can also be really nice. And this one has a really good VATS attack, so it has a lot going for it for a melee weapon. For the cons, the only real con to either of these weapons, outside of them just being melee and the natural cons that come with that, is that they're DLC weapons. You do have to go to Old World Blues in order to get them. But aside from that, they're quite good. They have good item health, they have good damage, they have good stats all the way around, they work really well as a general purpose weapon. There is also quite a few perks that we should talk about. So we have the standard perks that help out all of these weapons, at least for a melee and an unarmed build. So we've got Slayer to attack faster, which is really good. Super Slam to knock down enemies, that's even better with two-handed weapons like this one because it's more likely to trigger. Piercing Strike to punch through armor, because why not, you might as well. And Purifier to kill things like Deathclaws and Super Mutants a little bit easier. All of them are fantastic on the Proton Axe and on just any melee build. So for an overall rating for the Proton Axe, I'd put this thing up into A tier. I think it's a very solid weapon. It's just a straight upgrade to the axe, and I consider the axe already like a very solid A tier weapon as well. This one I would consider even more so, and even considering the special attack, where the axe does have Mauler, you could argue Mauler is better than this one. This one will do more damage, but Mauler is guaranteed knockdown, so they both have their pros and cons, but I think this one is a little bit better than a regular axe overall. Let's talk about the unique one, where you can actually get multiple unique Proton Axes in this. So you can get the Protonic Inverse Axe from a few enemies that have this, and a few locations that are around the map. Like there's one inside of the school. If you go through the hard-locked door, I believe, then you can find one on a corpse. If you go into the Cuckoo's Nest, you can find one on the named lobotomite there. They use it, and I think there's one or two other ones that you can get. This one can also be fixed up with the throwing axes as well, so that's really nice. This one, just like a lot of the Old World Blues weapons, has a weird requirement at 55 melee and 5 strength. Don't know why you need 5 extra melee, but there you go. You'll probably have it if you're going for this type of weapon. This one does 58 damage on hit, which is a bit higher than the regular axe. This one has 111 damage per second, 45 crit damage. This one actually doesn't suffer from as much crit damage loss as a regular axe, which is really good. 1x crit modifier. This one does cost slightly more action points at 25, as well as this one has its own unique VATS attack in it too, which is called the Inversal Scarifier. I don't think that's a real word, but I do like the name, so that one's pretty cool. This one also weighs 8 and has 250 item health, a little bit more item health than the regular Proton Axe. This one still has the bonus effect, though, of dealing extra damage towards robots and power armor enemies. So this one I would just consider a straight upgrade to the regular axe, and I would consider this one of the best melee weapons in the game. I would put this one all the way up into S tier. I think it's really good. If you want a very solid early game melee weapon, you can rush right to Old World Blues and do this right away. You don't need to be particularly high level to do that DLC, potentially even more so with a melee build because you're not as reliant on ammo. So yeah, the inverse axe is really, really nice. The regular axe is also really good. And that'll do it for both these axes. Tell me your thoughts on these. I think that they're pretty cool weapons. They're probably some of my favorite weapons, especially once I get to Old World Blues. I always like going to Old World Blues without any sort of equipment. I usually do that with most of the DLCs and just use whatever we get there. And like the Proton Axe or the inverse axe is always a go-to weapon that I use for the majority of this because it works so well against the Robo Scorpions and it works so well against the Lobotomites most of the time. Oh, and the Night Stalkers. Really good against the Night Stalkers since you can just keep swinging it and moving backward. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Talk to you guys next time. Bye-bye, everyone.